Hello everybody, today we're doing some stress cracks in a ceiling. This is the most common job in anybody's house. You're going to get these stress cracks. Most stress cracks are caused by, of course, structural movement, framing, stuff like that. Sometimes they're caused by bad sheetrock layout, just movement. Usually when you get a vertical or horizontal crack, that's just a common crack. When you start getting these diagonal cracks, you get more of a movement, structural movement. So we're just going to basically do the step process here, getting these tape seams and cracks ready for mud. First things first, always put down plastic. We are going to be digging out, chipping away the old tape here, so we want to be able to catch all of our debris. So it's easier just to put down some plastic, tarps, anything you have, just makes it easier for the cleanup. This is a spray texture that we're doing in here, and they have painted walls, so I'm going to go ahead and just staple up plastic around the walls. Just keep the mud off the walls, dust, anything like that. I'm using a little staple gun. This is not an aggressive staple gun. This just tacks the plastic up using these small 1/4 inch staples. Of course, you probably don't have one of these staple guns, so just use masking tape if you want to just keep these walls clean. Just go through, get everything plasticed off, and then we're going to go through and just dig out the old tape seams. The vertical and horizontal seams, you want to dig out the old tape. Once you get into these diagonal cracks, you're going to have to actually do a V-notch technique. V-notch technique's just basically channeling each side with a razor blade to open it up. You're making a V-notch channel. That way you can get the mud inside that channel and get it from ever re-cracking again. Of course, if you got more structural movement in the future, you're going to get stress cracks again. But this process, by digging out the old seams, V-notching, adding screws, doing fiberglass mesh tape, if it cracks after this, then you definitely have some structural movements. Digging out the tape, it is tedious. We have to work at it with the 6. Everybody thinks you just go in and put tape over the cracks and mud over it. I'm sure a lot of guys out there do, but to do it correctly, you want to take your time and dig out that old tape. The original tape is a paper tape. It's not a mesh tape. So if you're able to get that old paper tape out of there, it's worth the time it takes to get it out. You're making a nice groove in the drywall where you dug out that old tape. So when you do the new fiberglass, it sits right in your little channel that you dug out. So that's a benefit of digging out the old tape. Of course, areas that you V-notch, you're unable to get out tape because it's not cracked on the actual tape seam. It's just basically the sheetrock is ripping and tearing from movement. So that's why you get these diagonal cracks, zigzag cracks, straight cracks, horizontal, vertical. Those are the joint seams or butt seams that actually crack. Basically where the two sheets of sheetrock meet each other in the tape seam. So you'll know the difference when you see a straight crack, you know it's a joint seam. When it's a diagonal zigzag crack, then you know you got some structural movement, vibration. In this case, it looks like a vent. Whoever installed this air intake vent probably didn't install it right, or when they're in the attic, they probably stepped down on the ceiling. Who knows? We were just called in to get these areas crack repaired, so that's what we're doing. But yeah, simple video like this, just digging out old tape seams, stress cracks. Once you get it all dug out, you're going to add screws. Always add plenty of screws. That way, if it is loose sheetrock, you tighten it up. This is 1/2 inch sheetrock is in most interior homes. So 1 1/4 inch, 1.5 coarse drywall screws will do the trick. If it's 5/8 sheetrock, that's usually in garages or sometimes apartments or condos, then you're going to have to use an 1 5/8 or a 2 inch drywall coarse screw. But yeah, add plenty of screws. I've seen some people, they try to use like 3 or 4 inch screws. You don't need to use a big old screw if you're just doing the small area. But yeah, simple repair like this. I'm sure you probably have a stress crack in your house. This would be basically the step process of getting it all dug out and then get a first coat on it. We're going to get it all first coated. We're using a hot mud, so we're going to let that hot mud set up, and then we're going to turn around and slick it out. After you get it all slicked out or sanded first coat, your next step would be doing a tight second coat. Then you let that set up. Either slick it out if you're using hot muds. If you're using joint compound, sand it out. If it's still rough, you might have to do a tight third coat, and then you'll be ready for texture. On this one, we have a spray splatter texture. Depending on where you're at, you may have a different type of texture, but the repair process is the same. The texture is just a cosmetic finish. So some people have like a smooth texture. If you have a smooth texture, you would just do a third coat with a tight skim coat of a joint compound. All materials you should be using, if you haven't done a lot of muddings, just use an all-purpose joint compound to coat it and texture it. We use hot muds, quick set muds, like a 5-minute or 20-minute, because we have to finish these jobs in one trip. Those are more professional grade materials. So just use an all-purpose joint compound. That way, if you do make a mistake, you can sand away your mistakes. The only problem with the joint compounds, you have to let it dry overnight before you can do the second step. But yeah, simple video like this, getting all the stress cracks dug out, all the diagonal seams V-notched, add plenty of screws to tighten it up. Use a fiberglass mesh tape. I know there's a lot of tapes out there on the market. Just use a fiberglass mesh tape. Turn around first coat, let that set up. Second coat, let that set up. And then you can turn around and do your texture process. But yeah, hope you liked the video. We also have a whole other playlist like this doing stress crack repairs from start to finish. So this is just a step process here of getting them all dug out, masked out, first coated. So there's other videos on the channel doing the full process. Thanks for viewing.